think it's fair to say he was charged with this kind of notion that he was going to lead a different kind of life.
He's a talented mechanic. He's a carpenter, a builder, and yet a PhD of English.
He spoke differently. He walked differently. He dressed differently. And he seemed to want to interact with people in a different way than almost anybody else.
His influence, honestly, has always been felt.
He is different. Holy frick.
He's very flexible, and he loves new experiences. He could be anywhere geographically.
You just aren't sure where you're going to run into him, because he will disappear from your life for a long period of time, and suddenly he will pop up again.
You never know when you're going to see him. And I often wonder, I hope you don't get killed or something like that, you know, because sometimes you're traveling all over the friggin' place, you never know what's going to happen, eh?
He's one of the only people I've ever met who is really good at just about everything.
He really isn't like other people. He doesn't really live like other people.
Bear's been to Thailand, he's been to Europe a bunch of times, to Germany, England, he's been to Fiji, Cook Islands, he's been all over the place.
He will sacrifice anything to achieve his dreams or his ideas, to turn them into reality.
Some of his stories are a little bit weird, so he might be like just a little bit weird.
He was sort of filled with this notion that he was going to take a different approach to life, that he was going to lead the simple life.
Most of the time we spend with Bear is just sitting around the kitchen table telling stories, which is fun.
From many of the conversations I've had with him, he has a very, very bleak vision of the future. Not just that some people are going to go through hard times, but that really the foundations sort of are just going to collapse, and that life in a few years will look very, very different from how it has looked throughout most of the 20th century.
What are you doing? Checking for moisture. Making sure there's no leaks.
My name is David Folster, and I've known Barry off and on for probably 20 plus years. I don't know him well, but I know certain things that he has done over those years, and I find what he does is a very interesting way to lead one's life.
And I've known him for years, but the most fantastic thing about Barry in his many, many ways is every time he come, he always come with, a friend, a girlfriend, or whatever, and he come with on an old bike that he rebuilt all by himself, a Triumph. I mean, it was just, to me, it was amazing to watch it, because everything I did when I was a young fellow was always similar. You know, if I wanted something, we'd make it. Of course, when I was a young fellow, you didn't have everything there. If you wanted to do something, you had to make it, like bows and arrows. We had to make our own bows and our own arrows. And that's what Barry was. He'd take a bike and he'd put tin cans on it, whatever he could find that had to fit. And every time he came, he was always something different. And he might pull in here in an old bike, or he might pull in here on an old car, and he still does that. And then he'd go away, and you wouldn't see him for a long, long time. Then I get word from him from someplace, he'd be in the tropics someplace teaching.
I think that he has a very clear vision. He knows exactly what he wants. He's economical. He doesn't waste any time. And I think he's very gifted.
He's always been what I would call frugal, and he's always been an environmentalist. He's always been someone who didn't like to waste things. That hasn't changed. None of that has changed.
When he was very young, 12 years old, 13 years old, he's out spending most of his time in the woods and cutting down trees and building this fairly sophisticated cabin. I mean, it was something that you'd see in a Daniel Boone episode. It was very well built. It was sturdy.
I am in awe of his self-sacrifice. All of the things that normal people deal with. He seems not to require. He refuses all of this, and always has, since day one meeting him, to achieve any purpose he has set, any goal he has set.
Consumerism, for example, was not part of his existence, that he had decided to choose a different route. And I found that very interesting because his background was relatively modest, to say the least, and I don't know that she ever used the word impoverished, but that was my impression. And when you meet people like that, they are usually very anxious to enlarge their holdings, everything that they have in life they want to have more of. If you've had nothing, you want to have something, and something leads to something more, etc., etc. And in Barry's case, he had simply chosen not to go that route.
I really admire his ability to do a lot with a little. We certainly are a much too materialistic culture. He serves to remind us of that, and to show us that it's possible to live some other way and to still be happy.
Sometimes he gets a little too much into it. Sometimes I think he doesn't even have a cell phone for any emergencies or anything. He just, visits, so we don't really know what's happening over there. He couldn't contact anyone, but that's just Bear for you.
How was your night?
It was very good. It was very good.
I thought you were cold.
I was cold, but it was good.
I was gonna go pick up in the cabin. Just give me a minute. You were gonna pick up a what?
I finally killed that mosquito that was annoying me last night.
So how's that?
Very good. Very nice.
Been putting garlic in this.
That's good though.
Bear does not mind eating things after the expiration date. He feels, it's still good. He hates wasting food, and so he'll even risk getting sick, as far as I'm concerned, to not waste something. He will eat food that I would definitely not eat. The other day, Bear opened up his hummus, and it was all moldy on top. And he said, it's good underneath. So he just scraped off the mold, and then he ate the hummus, which something I'm just not going to do. But he says, look at what went into farming this, what went into making this. I'm not just going to throw it out. Bear is, what do you think, pretty much the least materialistic person I know. I didn't know Gandhi, so I don't know, Gandhi might have been less materialistic, but it's hard to believe.
It's amazing how little the man gets by on. I am shocked. He probably gets by in a year on the amount that I spend on tobacco.
He doesn't waste anything, and he doesn't buy anything. He lives on almost, just pennies a day, really. If he didn't have to eat, he probably wouldn't.
I like the wilderness of it. I like how you can't hear any cars, you can't hear any kind of city stuff. Why am I throwing this out? God, forget that we're on the land.
Right.
We don't have a lot of stuff here. We're poor. So you excited for today, Richard?
I am so excited for today.
side door was open.
No way! I closed it.
Now, is that all we're bringing is 2 packs?
You're gonna bring your pack. Do you have it, or?
No, I'm going to have to go get it.
Those are chives growing right here. In amongst what looks like broadleaf grass.
So this is your little chive garden, this whole screened-in area?
Nope. Chives are here. Planted garlic through here. We'll see if the slugs leave it alone. That's rhubarb, as you can tell. This is Jerusalem artichoke. This is, I transplanted this last year, so a bunch of it died, but not all of it. It's black currant.
Black what?
Currant. That's everything. I planted potatoes and other stuff too.
Bear is one of the freest people I know because he has the least constraints on him economically. He cruises all over the world like he had a magic carpet. And no one I know has the freedom of movement of Bear. And yet, he is also the least employed of anyone I know, and he doesn't suffer. He enjoys life.
Basically, without any advantages at all, he basically raised himself and went through school, went through college, and went from really having nothing to a PhD. With his talent, he could have accomplished pretty much anything, but again, his priorities are not materialistic. So he wanted to be a professor, and he did that, but he certainly could have done anything he wanted to do.
One of the things I remember about Barry, and I hadn't seen him for a number of years, and I was out on the St. John River, and we spotted this canoeist coming down the river, and as he drew opposite us, he shouted over, "Hello, Dave." Anyway, it turned out to be Barry, and he proceeded to tell us what he was up to and how he happened to be out on the river. And it turned out that he had started way up in Quebec on the St. Francis River in Quebec, and he had paddled all the way down. That's a kind of a typical Barry venture. And the other part of it is you just aren't sure where you're going to run into him, because he will disappear from your life for a long period of time, and suddenly he will pop up again.
Barry has a certain way and philosophies he sticks with, and like I say, he built his own boat. I haven't never seen that, and he come down the river and all the way out to the end. I seen him here, and then he told me all about it, and I never seen him again until the following year. I said, "Where the hell did you go?" "Oh, I left my boat down to somewhere, and I went back to so-and-so." I said, you never know when you're going to see him.
I think most people must know a bit about his boat building on the west coast and sailing back and forth across the Georgia Strait to Vancouver Island.
We'll take a hike down to Bashful's, but we don't actually go there because he's bashful and I don't think he really wants to see people. Watch your footing!
It's probably, the one time it's probably sheltered by that big pine stump over there. But whatever it is, it didn't really, not a lot of grew around here. It's starting to grow up now though. There's a chokecherry in amongst these bushes too. This is black cherry, this stuff. This is where deer wipe their butts. Okay, you don't step in the moose turds.
Okay. Right there, there's the moose turds.
You got them good?
Oh, yeah.
Wouldn't hurt if we had those other 2 packs.
We had what?
Those other 2 backpacks.
We forgot them?
That's a pine tree.
That's a nice tree.
Yeah. Gorgeous tree, huh?
That's a fine looking tree.
Almost a yard.
Yeah.
It's an interesting location because it's not really easy to get to. Sometimes I wonder whether I would have put it so far from the road, but it makes it have a truly backwoods feel.
I didn't really quite know what to expect. In fact, I expected the cabin to be a lot smaller, a little bit more rough. I expected there to be a little bit more work. When I went there, I was amazed that he created all these like water systems. It's almost like living on a farm, but without like the chickens running around and stuff.
I think it's awesome. I'd like to do something like that, sort of like not stay there the whole summer like Bear does, but go down every now and then. I like how it's away from everything else and it's just by itself.
He's got a place out there and he's been working on it, and I haven't seen him since he came up a month and a half ago or 2 months ago, and there's a place right up the road here, and I couldn't find it, and it's quite a ways out.
I was out to his project recently, and I was amazed. So I thought I would see a shack. And I think most people, if they came across it, would see a shack. Now, if you see the ideas he's trying to representing 12th century ideals, Vitruvius could have planned that shack. Okay, south-facing, water, everything about its location, everything about its size. Now, it's not a pretty building by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, I think at first it'd be kind of hard. Don't know where he finds all that wood. Because, you could just find it there in the woods, but I'd have to get used to the outdoors bathroom. It's kind of, yeah.
One of the really interesting things he's done is built a cabin out on his land in Canada. And what's really cool about that is not only can he build anything, but he can build something out of just about anything. So he built this cabin, which is looking really nice. I'd like to get up and see it. He built this home with no money at all, just from dumpster diving or things that people have given him, scrap wood, wood on the land, trees.
And he's called me, like I said, he let us know where he was that time he went to the islands, and he was teaching on an island someplace, and I don't know what he was doing, but what he was teaching, but and then he built himself a boat, and then he went down the St. John River in a canoe, and oh my God, the things he did, and still does. Every time I see him, he's just different.
A lot of this lift that. What are you going to do with this wood? Finish the design. It's a long one, but it's cut and grooved, so it's ours. Put that up right between the driver's seats. Yeah. Pushed up and down on the bumper a bit. This. See how much give they have still. This seems like about 30 tips. Well, cedar's lighter than it appears.
I've seen Barry more as he got older, and he was going to college and going to college and going to college. And I said, "Are you ever going to stop going to school?" And he never did. Well, he finally did, but now he's a professor and he's anywhere. I think he's in Winnipeg now, isn't he? You never know what the heck he's going to do, eh? But it's teaching when he works, whatever, professor. And I said, "Oh my God, you're a professor?" All the things we know and we talk to. And here he is, a professor. And I'm saying to myself, he doesn't sound, to me, when he's talking, for all the years I've known him, he never sounded like a professor.
He's a teacher, and he likes to teach us all. And so he teaches everybody at their own level. I mean, whether it's our kids with disabilities, whether it's his students, or whether it's me. I will say that, at one point, Bear lived with us for about a year and a half while he was teaching at Worcester State College. And I probably learned more myself about the world and about life and through Bear in that year and a half that he lived with us.
The students really, I mean, you can actually see them, their minds actually working and really starting to open up to ideas right in front of you, really. And it's really quite interesting to see 18, 19, 20-year-old youth really starting to think for the first time. And I think Bear offers that and presents opportunities for that in a way that you probably don't see in the academy as much as what you should.
We're all influenced by each other, whether we recognize it consciously or not. At least subconsciously, we are influenced, I think, by most people we meet. And in Barry's case, the knowledge of what he's trying to do registers in some way with the people he comes into contact with. And that has an effect. And that, I think, makes people think about what they have in their life. It gives them pause. And that's a useful thing.
Well, it seemed to be his goal when I first knew him, to stand out, to be different, and to take people out of their comfort zones a little bit and challenge their assumptions and their beliefs. And although that's not necessarily comfortable, it is beneficial.
I have 3 daughters, and Barry's like an uncle to them.
He's closer than most family. I mean, he is family to us, and so the kids call him Uncle Bear.
He thinks their kids are great and well behaved. He, I think, is good for them because I like the kids to be open-minded.
Sometimes I have a habit of saying, he or she is weird, and so Bear tells me, not to judge people like that, learning about them first.
And so to have Bear around to spur conversations, they can see that we can accept Bear's point of view, he can accept our point of view, and I would like them to see all sides of issues and be able to make up their own mind. So, and I think having Bear around fosters that.
I think Bear's a really good influence on the kids.
I wanted a Bigfoot costume, and I was originally going to buy one. But then Uncle Bear said, "Oh, no, I'll just make it." And I said, "Oh, awesome." So we made that.
It's kind of strange to tell them, well, I have a friend, and he's bought this land out in the middle of nowhere. I don't even really know where it is. And he's built like these houses or cabins way back in the middle of the woods. And so we go there and we hang out with him.
We sat down and we were just waiting for him. So Bear told us a whole lack of stories, and the weird bear stories, And so once we got back home that night, I couldn't sleep because I was thinking about all the weird, scary stories.
I love the strangeness of them. I love how they're weird, and yet they have a certain power to them.
He made up a story about a little boy, and when he was young, he had a basement like that, and there was a hole in the wall of the basement. And so then he stuck his hand in, and a hand on the other side grabbed his.
We have the world around us, this sort of physical world or whatever, that is biting insects and fast vehicles and all this other kind of stuff that's around us. And we have that, and then we have a vision of what we want the world to be and our fantasy of what the world is. And we try to make those align in some way. And, with how much success, who knows. If they align extremely successfully, then the people will say you're a scientist because your fantasy is similar to my reality.
Pretty nice bridge. In the water?
Yeah.
Okay, if you're sure. I'm not afraid of it, but... Oh, wow! Gosh.
Yeah, careful.
Pretty cold.
Well, not really. I'll be used to it. Watch out for the rocks.
Okay. So what are you doing? You're tying those two together? Ah, okay. So basically what this man is doing, he's tying wire to the logs, banging them in with the nails, and he's going to do that all the way across.
Good wire cutter, Mr. Not bad, eh? I couldn't have done that in a million years. Nothing like a sharp rock. No.
When I go to see Uncle Bear on the land, I do a lot of carrying stuff back and forth. I could never live like him, although it would be nice if I could adapt to living like him, but I don't think I could unless I unless I really had to.
When you go visit Bear, you will always be carrying stuff into his land. And it's probably like a kilometer over the brook, down the hill, through the marsh, through the woods, to the cabin.
Oh, you guys are doing great. Are you wet? Okay. Oh my god, you okay? I don't want you to die. I think we're just playing in the water.
My connection with Barry has been sort of hit and miss. And because he seems to travel all over the world and is at this university for a while and then another one for a while, so on and so forth, it's more miss than hit. But as I said earlier, he does come into my life again, and I always enjoy seeing him. I always enjoy chatting with him. I always appreciate what he is doing. You know, communities, perhaps because of the price of oil and gas, are going to have to be more self-contained. They're going to have to be larger versions of Barry. And, you know, that's where we have to go. And we need some visionary thinking.
Bear's way is the way. I know that I would be incredibly challenged to do half of what he does.
When you walk through the bush, then you're going to bend plants, and other plants you're going to step on, and some of them you're going to kill. Like there's a little mushroom that grows back here in the bush called Indian pipe. It's a little very fragile, bent kind of mushroom. And it really doesn't take much of a brush with your foot before that mushroom's days are over. And so, but that, you know, in the broad scheme of things, that's a fairly understandable destruction, because you are trying to get from one place to another in the bush or whatever, and you're not willfully destroying.
The issue that's big for Bear that really bothers him is the fact that the planet is overpopulated. There's way too many humans, and humans just wreck everything. And I don't think that's a secret. I think we all realize that.
Okay, we're to the end. He built a bridge out of all recycled materials, all materials that he found. And, quite a clever bridge that he was able to build, and then he pulls it over the brook, and then secures it, and then in the winter he pulls it back on these pulleys, and that way he's able to keep the bridge safe.
Crank! Oh! Yeah, this is the big test. We did it, Uncle Bear.
Seemingly.
I haven't talked to him very much. You know him a lot better than I do. But he does seem to have a bleak vision of the future of society. And he seems to be doing this thing in part to prepare.
He's always felt that the end times are nigh, and unlike religious folks who think the end times are nigh and thus are looking to, you know, their God or something else, Bear looks to himself in the context of the end times coming. So he's preparing at any given moment for the end of really civilization as we know it. He's been preparing for that for some 30 years.
But it still hasn't come.
So far, no, but he looks ahead. I mean, if there's one thing about Bear, he looks ahead.
I tend to be very much an optimist, and I find it hard to imagine that we would be so foolish as to squander what we have. And that may be said with a great deal of naivete and innocence, because terrible things can happen, and once the snowball begins the roll down the hill, there's no stopping it. I don't like to think that that will happen. It's a beautiful, the world is a beautiful place, and are we going to be dumb enough to just wreck it completely? On the evidence, Barry would say yes, and he may be right.
And you should know today, the more we go, the worse everything gets, like the forest and the water, and you know, they're trying to go back to green, but they're kind of waiting for the wrong time. They should have done it years ago.
And I guess this brings us back to Barry, really, in a way, because he may be on the fringe now, but that may not always be the case. I mean, the economic problems of recent months, years, are an awakening, I think. And I think that everybody, the richest people, have been given pause to think, well, maybe we've got to cut back.
Certainly, Bear carries the weight of a prophetic figure in many ways, for sure. And I can't say that he's always been wrong. I mean, by any means. He's often been quite right.
I think Bear bought his land and is building the cabin in the woods in order to make less of a mark on the environment and to have a place to go as things change in our society, as there's less food, less jobs, more people going hungry. He wanted a place for him and his friends to go that would be safe, rather than in the cities where it's going to be chaos.
I will never know what his goal is. He has just gone on to do what his vision is.
Well, this sort of skeptical look at consumerism is loose in the land now, and Barry would be out in the vanguard, but leading his kind of life. And I have to say, it's not a life that everybody will choose, but it simply makes you think, I think, that, maybe we ought to all cut back.
And also, like, he'll have fires at night, and so I break sticks, which is quite tedious, but... Put this on here, because I can't snap it.
I'll do it. Interesting how this is considered a vacation.
Yeah, no, everyone...
Living like this is considered a vacation for a lot of people. But if they had to come out here and, the vacation was never going to end, how long would it be before it wasn't a vacation anymore? It's interesting how, the harsh reality of life before modern conveniences has become our kind of Disney World.
You break up those sticks and throw them in the fire.
And even a simple task is breaking up sticks. Kids, this is fun, we're breaking up sticks and throwing them in the fire. We're breaking up sticks and throwing them in the fire. But you have a kid in the cabin, and then 3 months, okay, go outside and break up sticks today. It's I don't want to break up sticks. Why do I have to break up sticks? It is amazing how little thought we can give to food when you just can throw it in a microwave, get it, go to the grocery store, have thousands of choices, just throw it in the microwave, and it's done. You don't even think of where did this food come from, the energy to produce it. It costs you barely the maybe 10 minutes of energy. And so I think it is, the further you get from the land, the easier it is to forget, what it takes to make food. But it's easy for me to be philosophical when I'm going, you can throw that in, when I'm going back to my modern conveniences, and I'm going back to 222 channels on the television, none of which I want to even watch.
But I don't get any sense in talking to him that he looks down and is very cynical or skeptical about the kind of life I lead. That does not seem to be part of his persona, which I find admirable, because in that kind of situation, it makes you sort of, in a way, it gives him more credibility. He's not preaching, he's not saying you're doing it the wrong way and I'm doing it the right way. There's none of that in his personality at all that I have encountered. So I don't find him removed from society, except in the way he lives. He does, or where he lives, goes off and lives in the forest, which I find admirable. I could not do it, and I think I have to say that it would not be part of my existence.
I think an awful lot of us that know Barry don't know each other, because his friends are all over the place and from so many different experiences that he's had. Not very many of us get together to talk about him because we don't know each other.
I mean, he's obviously a pretty happy guy, very self-contained, seems to be, without proselytizing about it, he seems to be filled with the passion of leading the kind of life he leads.
He certainly values his relationships with people over his possessions, and that's a very good example for all of us.
I think Bear understands that what is important in life is being happy. And he knows what makes him happy, and he goes for it.
He really tries to take the emotional anxieties out of the issue and come up with a solution. If you call him with a problem, and no matter what it is, it can be with your relationships, with your plumbing, housing, job, he will work with you and give you a host of solutions. You may not like the solutions Bear gives you, but they will be solutions. And a lot of people just like to wallow in their grief, and Bear likes to come up with solutions and find out how best to help you. So I would say Bear is a helper. He's a helper bear.
I'm glad that he's a part of our lives, because our lives are better because of Uncle Bear. I mean that sincerely.